Okay, so here's the deal. A lot of us have super 35mm cameras. A lot of us have full frame cameras. But the people with the super 35mm cameras want to get that more easier to get shallow depth of field, wider angle like a full frame sensor. I don't want to get into the whole debate about sensor sizes right now, but I do want to talk about speed boosters for a second. There's lots of information online about speed boosters, but today what we're talking about is something a little bit special and unique that you probably haven't got to see before or use before. So normally your speed booster, like the one that I use on my Komodo, is a Canon version of the speed booster. It is, meant for Canon RF to EF lenses. And that's, the mirrorless cameras with a speed booster, they kind of have to be this size, right? They have to be kind of tiny in order to get the mounts and the flange distance to all work correctly. And so the main problem is when you're trying to shoot cinema with the speed booster is that you can't use something like this here, a PL mount. A PL mount that is more the professional standard of mounts. It's more acceptable with more cinema lenses and is a much more solid build. And really this is what you ideally want to be using as a PL mount. So it's really hard to put a focal reducing lens, a lens that's going to squeeze your image down onto a super 35mm sensor in one of these because the flange distance just doesn't work out. A lot of PL lenses have a really long, back flange on them. So if you can see this Sigma right here, look how long that is. Look how long that protrudes out. Now, this isn't a big deal with like using mirrorless cameras because you can just throw on a mount like this and make it work. But putting a lens element inside of it like this one has, it's like basically a little magnifying glass to make sure that you can capture the full scale of a full frame lens, the image, and project it down onto your super 35mm sensor doesn't usually work. But a fellow Komodo user said, forget that, I want this to work. And so he decided to build his own. He started a little company and made his own little mount. And he actually sent me one of his prototypes. He's trying to get these made on a bigger level here. And so what we have here is exactly that. It's a speed booster, a focal reducer that works with PL lenses. Now, it's not going to work with every PL lens ever designed. Like I said, a lot of them have the protruding back element, but most modern lenses don't do that. They're designed for the more modern sensors and mounts. And so a lot of manufacturers are trying to remake their lenses in a way that fit on a lot of different mounts. And so a lot of them work. Like this Sigma 40mm that I'm using here, it's got a really long back, but it does work inside this adapter. So what he's done, basically, he's created a two-part mount. So basically, this is my little RF mount. I mount this onto the camera first. I tighten it up, which is kind of nice. It's a little cumbersome. You do have to tighten down some screws once you've mounted it on the camera, at least with this version that he's, the prototype version. But it does really make it nice and secure. And it's like, if you're going to be using it for an entire day anyways, and you're not swinging from PL to EF or RF, then it's like you want that anyways. You want it to be kind of a part of your camera. So if you're only going to put it on one time and never take it off again, not a big deal. For me, I'm swapping lenses all the time with weird stuff because I'm doing tests on this channel. So it's a little cumbersome for me. But you basically put this on first, and then you take the actual adapter and you seat that inside of it like this. And now it all works as one piece. And then you have the positive locking mount, the PL mount, and you can use full frame cinema lenses with that. It's pretty cool. Definitely cool for the Komodo system because it's a cinema camera, but it doesn't have that full frame sensor. It's a very affordable camera. This would also work on your Komodo X if you have a Komodo X or like a C70. And right now he only has an RF version in his prototype stage and on his Indiegogo, but he will also be making a lot more lens mounts, including Sony and L mount and stuff like that. Because basically all he has to do is redesign this back for each camera and it should work, which is pretty cool. So he's actually tested it with a lot of different lenses, like he even was able to use the Atlas Orions with his first test batch. And then like I said, I'm using the Sigma cinema lenses here and they work really well in this setup. It also has this really nice lens support on the bottom here. So I was actually able to screw in a support and lock this whole thing into my mount, which really made it sturdy and hold up this giant lens like this with no problems on my little RF mount. Because for some reason, I don't know if anyone's noticed on the channel, but my RF mount on my Komodo is a little loose. And so when I'm adding big lenses to to the front of it and you start yanking on the follow focus, sometimes it gets a little squirrely. People have commented on this on my videos before. They're like, why is that lens moving? It's not the lens, it's my mount. I'm sure there's a way for me to tighten it, and I probably should do that. I don't know if they all do that. I don't think they all do that. I think it's a problem with my camera specifically. But with this, it's supported by that little screw on the bottom, and it makes it lock in, and it's so sturdy and so nice. Like I said, I only have a prototype, so I can't talk to how these are going to be manufactured and how good the quality is going to be moving forward. I can only talk about the prototype, but also keep that in mind. Any of the footage that I'm showing is with prototype glass and with the mount itself, so I maybe have more issues with mine. One more thing to talk about, just like with any PL mount or any cinema lens, you might have to shim the mount in order to get your lens to calibrate correctly. Getting each measurement for your distance on your focus correctly. So for when I got this one in, it was supposed to be pre-calibrated. I don't know what was going on. Maybe it's just how I had it mounted, but I had to re-shim it in order to get the Sigma 40mm that I'm testing here to work completely, to get to infinity focus and to get the focus markings correct. When focusing on the lens itself, you can see the measurements, right? Pretty simple. I just take out a couple, 4 screws here, and there's these little skinny shims that you just slide in there, and then you mount it back on, and you'll be able to test it to see how the focus markings work on your lens. What is nice about this is that it is like modular, and yeah, it's a little bit more cumbersome, but it gives you so much flexibility for shimming and for putting it on many different cameras and stuff. So I think you kind of solve that issue by creating the mount separately from the actual unit itself, which I bet too, I don't know if he's talked about this, but you could also probably get multiples of these and be able to swap out the mount for different cameras. Kind of like I can with my Mofage here. This ND PL mount that I have, you can swap out the back here, and I can put this on a Sony camera, or I can put this on my Komodo. And it's nice because you only have to have the one mount. You don't have to rebuy these things. Now, Metabones does have something similar, but I believe how their glass is set up, it's the same glass as their regular speed booster, their focal reducer. And so it doesn't take very many lenses. It says it only takes, specific Area and Zeiss lenses. And it's really not recommended to use it with a lot of other PL lenses, whereas this one is much more versatile from what I can tell. The flange distance is much more forgiving based on how he put his lens element inside. So looking at a few tests here with it, optically it's pretty good. From what I can tell, if I'm wide open on the 40mm at t1.5, doesn't focus great there. There's a little bit of this kind of ghosting blur effect that happens wide open, but the moment I just barely stop it down, everything becomes sharp and the way that you would want it to be. So if you're shooting at T2 with the 40mm versus shooting at T2 with the 40mm with the speed booster, you're gonna get 0.71x wider field of view. You're gonna get more light transferring to your sensor. So in theory, you're gonna get closer to that full frame amount of light and perspective, which is really nice. You get a little bit more shallow. You can get closer to your subjects with the same focal length. There's a little bit of tinge on the color. From what I can tell, the Sigma is a little bit magenta when it's just straight out of camera, when there's no adapter attached to it, and you put the adapter on, it gets a little bit more green, a little more teal. Not the end of the world. Once again, I've talked about on this channel, if you're going to have to sacrifice color, I'd rather it lean more green than magenta anyways, for my taste. Does have that. I don't know if the coating on the manufactured lens element will be a little bit better or not, but for the one that I'm testing, that's just what it looks like. And then maybe also he'll be able to get the optics a little bit better when he does make his, full run, and you'll be able to shoot wide open with a little bit higher quality. But it does work as advertised. You are getting a wider field of view, and you are getting more light to your sensor when you use this mount. So I couldn't really recreate another problem I had. Every once in a while I'd get this interesting gold light leak. I don't have it, I don't think, in any of this test footage here, which is a good thing that it's not really showing up, but every once in a while I was playing with it, it would show up. I'm sure that is something that will not be in the final product as well. It might be just how I mounted it. Like I said, it's kind of a work in progress. But if you do want to get your hands on one of these when they do start manufacturing them, you can go to their website and pre-order them, and you can see more test footage with the mount. But for anyone that's really looking for something like that, it's definitely worth considering and having in your kit, and it's pretty awesome that someone finally developed it. Also, stay tuned for those extra mounts like the Sony mounts, etc. Maybe you want to shoot on an FX30 or something of the like, and you want to be able to speed boost it. Well, then you'll be able to do that with this in the future. So just a fun new little piece of tech that's coming out. I'm glad that stuff like this is getting made. Before we go, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, which, those sponsors allow me to talk about gear like this that's coming out and test it out. And this video's sponsor is Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to present your work online. You can start with one of their best-in-class templates, or using Squarespace's next-generation web design system Fluid Engine, you can customize every detail with the reimagined drag-and-drop technology for desktop or mobile. Or maybe you want to start an online store to sell your photography or other products. Squarespace has all the built-in functionality to get one of those up and running quickly, and I've actually been using Squarespace to run my online stores for almost a decade now. And of course, if you're like me, you're probably looking to build a portfolio, which Squarespace has a ton of features for that very thing. You can even create private galleries for client work using these tools. So if you're looking for a home for your work, well, you can just do that with Squarespace. Click the link in the description to get 10% off, and I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. And that's it for me today. Until next time, guys, as always, I'm Spencer Sakurai. See ya.